You're now watching CalTv.
Good afternoon and welcome to CalTv. Thank you for joining us. I'm Jim Caselli. The topic of today's show is the AR module's mass completion page. I recently sat down with Fiscal AR team member Heidi Batas to talk about the mass completion page, and she also has a demo for you. Now, here's my conversation with Heidi.
Heidi, welcome to CalTv. Thank you for joining us today. And as we always do on CalTv, we always ask our guests to provide a little bit of their background. So let's start off today with that.
Hi, Jim. Thanks so much for having me. I've worked in Fiscal since 2013, and I am currently a member of the FSC AR team providing production support for AR, BI, and CM modules. And I'm also a member of the SCO AR production support team providing support for the implementation, operations, and maintenance of SCO processes in Fiscal.
Okay, so today's CalTv episode is the AR module's mass completion page. So can you tell us what the mass completion page is?
Well, Jim, the mass completion page has functionality that allows departments to process direct journal payments, otherwise known as DJP, in mass, in lieu of processing transactions individually on the Create Accounting Entries page. And similar to the actions taken in the Create Accounting Entries page, the mass completion page allows users to 1. Select a request type and assign the required document information. 2. Create accounting entries for the cash lines. 3. Complete and certify. And finally, 4. Submit for multiple deposit IDs and payment sequences. The mass completion page can be used to complete direct journal payment processing for payments created by Interface INF AR18 or payments created online. It is a helpful tool to use, especially when the department has high volumes of transactions, for example, multiple deposit IDs and/or multiple payment sequences within a deposit ID that they need to process in bulk. The mass completion functionality saves time and streamlines the direct journal payment process as users have an alternative to performing the DJP accounting actions in groups instead of individually.
Wow, saving time and streamlining is a great thing, obviously. So what rules are needed for the department user to use this process?
The role for the mass completion page is the AR payment approver. However, if the department needs their AR payment processors to also perform actions on this page, they can be granted the AR payment approver role as well.
And where do department users go to get to this page?
They will navigate to Main Menu, Accounts Receivable, Payments, Direct Journal Payments, Mass Completion.
Okay, so Heidi, I know you're going to do a demo for us today on the mass completion page so our users can see how it works. So let's get to that now.
All right, let's do that, Jim. For today's demo, I'll only be showing mass completion for direct journal payments. Customer item payments will be addressed at a later time when the CIP enhancement approval is implemented in production in the near future. So we're going to navigate to Main Menu, Accounts Receivable, Payments, Direct Journal Payments, Mass Completion. This is to view a list of open deposit IDs that will need the direct journal payments applied. At the top of the page, you'll see the search criteria. Note the fields with an asterisk are required. For deposit unit, we're going to select our BU. Deposit ID, we're going to leave blank as we're doing a mass process, but you may enter a specific ID as needed. Transaction type, the choices are DJP and CIP. For today's demo, we're selecting DJP. Deposit type and CTS bank account can be used to further filter your search criteria, but normally would be left blank to capture a wider result of deposit IDs. Deposit option. Options are non-zero dollar, which are your regular deposits tied to a deposit slip. The $0 is for TC 47 $0 remittances. For example, moving from uncleared collections CTS fund to the ultimate state fund and account. Or it can be for TC 35, TC 38 $0 remittance corrections. Action ID. This is a system-generated number that is assigned to the accounting action being processed. Accounting date. Use if you need to limit the deposit IDs to be displayed by date range. Assigned operator ID. Choices are all, fiscal batch, specify user. If you only want to see transactions you created, you can select specify user and a field will appear so you can enter your GUI ID. Chunk size. Enter the maximum number of transactions you want your search results to display. It defaults to 50, but you may enter a max of 300. Accounting actions. This is a required field, and the user must select one action at a time. For the first action, assign request type in docs. Request type categorizes the payment being remitted and requires document information to support the payment transaction being processed. Create accounting entries. This creates the cash line for all the deposit payments for which revenue lines have been coded. Complete and certify. This is the next step after all the deposit payments for which accounting entries are created. This action will check the complete checkbox and certify the transactions. Pending certify. This is a listing of all the deposit payments for which the complete checkbox is checked, but the payment is not yet certified. Submit for approval. This is the final step for all the deposit payments that have been completed, certified, and ready to be submitted for $0 deposits. For $0 deposits, this is for all the payments within those deposits that are completed and certified for that ZDD. To troubleshoot errors, the following actions are available. Account entries in errors. This is a listing of all the deposit payments with chart-filled combination errors. Budget check errors. This is a listing of all the deposit payments with budget check errors. Incomplete payment. This is a listing of all the deposit payments which are marked as complete but not certified, not submitted for approval, pending approval, denied by SCO, or in budget check error. Request type and account error. This is a listing of deposit payments that have an error on the request type and accounts used. Some key points to keep in mind when using the mass completion functionality. When selecting the deposit IDs or payment sequences to be processed as a group, be sure that the information to be entered will be applicable to all selected transactions. If not, you must group them separately. For example, select only those deposit IDs and payment sequences that have the same request type and document information for accounting action, assigned request type, and docs. Only pay sequences that are ready for the next action step selected will display for that action. For example, if the pay sequence hasn't been completed and certified, it won't appear in the next action step submit for approval as they've not completed the prior action step. Today, I'm going to do a demo for a direct journal payment that is a $0 deposit. So here we select the BU, the transaction type as GJP, deposit option is $0, assigned operator ID is specify user, in which the GUI ID is entered, and the accounting action, assign request type in docs. Click on search, and you will see a list of all the open deposit IDs that met the search criteria. And here you will see the following fields. Select for the checkbox, deposit unit, deposit ID, payment sequence, deposit type, accounting date, CTS bank account, location code, deposit slip number, control count, payment amount, total deposit amount, assign operator ID, and action ID. You may select multiple transactions by clicking the select box on each of the payment sequences or deposit IDs you wish to process, or click on Select All to select all the transactions on the list. So here, we will select the transactions to be processed. And then click on Related Documents. And here I will select the request type. And depending on the configuration rules, the document type may pre-populate. If it's not pre-populated, select from the drop-down list and enter the required information. Use the plus button to add additional document types as needed. So here I'm going to select my legacy ID. Followed by the journal ID. And finally, the original deposit ID. And the payment sequences I'm processing. Click OK. An action message with action ID appears, informing the user that the assign request type and docs process is being initiated. Note the action ID in case you need it as a search criteria for further research on deposits at a later time. Click OK to exit out of the message. So we're going to navigate to create accounting entries. And here you will see the request type created via the mass completion process, along with the document types for document information. And the same goes for pay sequence 2. You will see the request type selected and the document information that was created via the mass completion process. So I'm going to navigate back to pay sequence 1 and enter my distribution line. Click on Save. And moving on to pay sequence 2, I will enter my distribution line. Click on Save. So we're going to get back to the mass completion page where we're going to select the next action step. So here we're going to select Create Accounting Entry. Click on Search. To assist departments with viewing the accounting entries, the user may click on the Download Search Results to download the search results as an Excel file. You may also click on the Deposit ID hyperlink, and the system takes you to the Create Accounting Entries page. So here we're going to select our transactions. Click on the lightning bolt icon. And here you will see the action message with the action ID appear, informing the user that the Create Accounting Entries process is being initiated. Click OK. And now we're going to navigate back to the Create Accounting Entries page. So for payment sequence 1, you will see that the cash line has been created with account 1104000. Next, we go to pay sequence 2. And here also you will see the cash line created for account 1104000. So now we're going to go back to the mass completion page, and we're going to go to the next action step. We click on Complete and Certify. Click on Search. And here we're going to look for our transactions to process. So we're going to be selecting payment sequence 1 and 2 for our deposit ID. Click on Complete and Certify. And here you will see the Direct Journal certification box. Click on the certification box. Enter the email address, followed by the phone number. Click OK. And you will see the action message with the action ID notifying the user that the complete and certify process is being initiated. We're going to click OK. And we're going to navigate back to the Create Accounting Entries page. For payment sequence 1, you will see the complete checkbox checked. For payment sequence 2, you will also see the complete checkbox checked. So moving back to pay sequence 1, I will now enter the legacy description, which is a required field. Click on Save. Moving on to payment sequence 2, I will also enter my legacy description. Click on Save. And now we're going to navigate back to the mass completion page and select our final action, which is Submit for Approval. Click Search. So you'll notice on this page for this action that there are 3 new fields that appear: legal authority and reason for request, notes to approver, and the type of transaction. Legal authority and reason for request is a required field. So I will select the transactions I want to process and enter my information. And now I'm going to click on Submit for Approval. And you will see the action message with action ID appear, notifying the user that the Submit for Approval process is being initiated. Click on OK. And now we're going to go navigate back to Create Accounting Entries page. So for payment sequence 1, you will see the legacy description that we entered earlier. You will see the legal authority and reason for request with the information processed via the mass completion page. And you will also see the certification details that was completed in the previous step. And navigating to payment sequence 2, you should also see the legacy description previously entered, the legal authority and reason for request completed by the mass completion action, and the certify information details from the previous step. So that concludes our demo for today. So now I will bring it back to Jim.
Heidi, thank you so much for that demo. So where do users go if they have questions regarding the mass completion process?
So Jim, the department users can submit a ticket to the FSC, and the FSC AR team will make sure that they address the questions.
Well, that sounds pretty easy, and I'm glad to hear that. We do have a couple of questions here for you. So let's start with the first one. It says, I am the manager of our unit and I rely on my staff to process the mass completion of our transactions. They have the AR payment processor role. Does this role have access to the mass completion page?
No, it does not. They need to have the AR payment approver role in order to have access to process the actions on the mass completion page. The users can have both the AR payment processor and approver roles, as this isn't a SOD conflict.
Okay, so here's our next question. Can our department request a USL if we need to get a better understanding of the mass completion process?
Yes, absolutely. The departments may submit a request for USL as per the normal procedures found on the FSC website.
Okay, here's our next question. For a regular deposit with deposit slip, do all payment sequences need to be processed together on the mass completion page?
No. For a regular deposit tied to a deposit slip, each payment sequence may be processed on its own, regardless of the status of the other payment sequences within that deposit ID. For example, if you have a total of 10 payment sequences, of which 7 are ready to be processed and 3 are not, you may process the 7 even if the other 3 are not yet ready.
Okay, and here's our final question. Do I need to wait for a batch process before I can perform the next action step in the process?
No. When you see the action message with the action ID, confirming that action has been initiated, you may navigate to the Create Accounting Entries page to see the data created by the mass completion functionality. Then you can go back to the mass completion page to continue on to the next accounting action.
Okay, that's great information, Heidi. We certainly appreciate your time today. Thank you for being with us. And again, we appreciate your time and thanks for being with us here on Fiscal TV today.
Thank you, Jim. I'm glad to be here.
That's our show for today. Thanks again to Heidi Batas for being with us. Remember, if you have any questions or issues with the mass completion page, make sure and open an FSC ticket. And if you would like to see this or any of our Fiscal TV shows, you can find them on our YouTube channel. Don't forget to let your colleagues know about us. And from everyone here at Fiscal TV, thank you for joining us today. We hope to see you in August when Ajita Nimkar will be here with a demo of the Power BI P-Card transaction report. That's on August's episode of Fiscal TV.
You've been watching Fiscal TV. To view this and other episodes of Fiscal TV, please subscribe and follow our YouTube channel.